hello, everybody, and happy Saturday, and welcome to a special Saturday edition of Conversations with Jeff, where our mission is to bring impactful guests like we have coming up today that are willing to share their most vulnerable parts in their lives, the journey that they've gone through in the battle of the comeback, right? Giving you, the listener out there, some empowering tools that you can use, some solutions that you can use to keep moving forward, right? To stop that stinking thinking from being the captive of your life, baby. Right? I mean, taking some things and then turning the key to another door, opening that door and walking through it, right? Because I tell you, our mission has always been about bringing these guests in, and more importantly, letting them just be who they are, man, from all over the world, all types of messaging, all types of situations. And they found their way through, and now they're serving, just like many of you want to, right? So today's guest, man, well, we'll just bring her on here in a second. I just want to tell you that we were supposed to have a show on Thursday. For those of you that come back and do that, that was not on her. That was all on me. You know, I just, we do things the wrong way sometimes, and I did, and I screwed it up. So, but she was kind enough, guys, to come back today. All right. So anyway, for those of you that don't know me, my name is Jeff Tyson, and I'm the host of Conversations with Jeff, and I'm known as the Comeback King. And I got that name. You would think, where did that come from? And it was given to me from other folks who have shared with me that by working with me and being around me, and that there were points in their lives that the things we went through was that I was able to help them go through something and come back to where, they were stronger than they were when they started, right? So they actually, man, were kind enough to put that name on me, not because I'm the king of all of these things, but they just felt empowered to give me that title, right? So I'm grateful to be able to be a part of people's lives. Just like our speaker today, we speak from the heart, baby. So anyway, let me just go through a quick bio, and then we'll kind of get right to it so you guys can really, really get to know this woman like I've gotten to know her. All right, listen, she was raised, and this is true stuff, right? So I'm going to highlight what she shared with us. Kimberly Henry was raised by two alcoholic parents and experienced domestic violence at home in upstate New York. At an early age, she was pregnant with her daughter, whose father was also a drug addict. She was a couple of weeks shy from her 23rd birthday when she chose to be a single parent and left a domestic violence relationship with her daughter's father. She believes in the movement to help others heal from their past trauma. She has been on 30-plus podcasts as guest panelist and a guest panelist on numerous panels and a speaker in several different summits, sharing her message, sharing her powerful story around how she managed to break the patterns, right? She also hosts a show called The Kimberly Show. She is an ontological life coach and wellness coach. She is also a member of Sorrow Optimist International of her area in upstate New York. She is a recipient of a Purple Ribbon of Courage Award by family and friends of Lisa Ellen Warner, and the 2024 Empowerment Award winner by YWCA in Northeastern New York. There's a whole lot more to this lady that I have not shared with you yet, so let's get busy talking to her. Ladies and gentlemen, help me bring to Conversations with Jeff, my dear friend Kimberly Henry. Hello.
Thank you for that intro. That was so awesome.
Yeah, well, it's reading what you gave me, so that's what your experience is. So it's always kind of nice to hear about ourselves from others. So
right? I can hear it differently when you say it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I know what you mean. Like, is that really me that they're saying? Well, yes, it is. Yes, it is. So thank you again for taking the time out on a Saturday, Kimberly, to be with us. And you shared some things right off the beginning in your bio about, the trauma and the situations and all that. So I really would like to give you an opportunity to say hello, and then maybe we can kind of get into some things that I know is going to be really powerful around trauma and relationships.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, well, it's been a while that we were trying to get you on the calendar, and I know you've been busy doing a lot of different things. So what's up with Kimberly now? Talk to us.
Well, let's see. I'm working on getting my memoir published this year. That's just been a journey, looking Honestly, it's part of the story too, because it's working through all of the obstacles that I feel that I have, that I get to publish it. There's a vulnerability in there that feels super scary to put my own personal story out there.
Mm.
And so I'm kind of feeling like it may even look different than what I've been holding on to, thinking that it's going to be. You know how like sometimes we can get attached to what things are supposed to look like. So I'm opening up to this year that I'm going to trust the process, and it's going to look the way that it's meant to look, not how I feel that it's supposed to look. And so,
Well, that's what I love about you. I mean, you just speak things that are so raw sometimes and bold and from the heart. So when you said something in that little presentation that you're not sure how it's going to come out, how it's going to turn out, and
yeah,
is there some
yeah.
apprehension around that? I mean, or you seem to be pretty calm either way, but as people try to branch out and do what you're doing and share their stories, how can you get around that? I mean, what are you doing? Or it's not keeping you back from doing it. I mean, what are you using to be able to keep moving forward?
Well, mindfulness. A
Mm,
lot of it is the mindfulness. It's trusting the process, trusting the journey,
mm,
being willing to detach in the sense of like coming from an alcoholic home. I tend to have security and wanting control
yeah,
when we both know there is no control. That's just an illusion.
yeah, you're absolutely right. We think it's protecting us, but really it's killing us on the inside.
Yeah, yeah, there is no control. When I think I have control, it's just a funny illusion because it's what do I think that I have control over?
Yeah,
There is no, the only thing I can control is how I'm reacting to something. So that's
yeah,
why the mindfulness is helpful because it keeps me in the present moment and reminds me that it's me that I can control. I can't control others. I can't control what happens per se. I can control how I'm reacting to it.
right. Right. But control is it's easy for us to talk about it, but it's hard to put it down. It's hard to let it go,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Because it served in my life for a long time and it protected me. And so, but what did you do to kind of finally say, man, all right, I see that this control thing is really not working, and I need to do something different.
Mm,
What were some beginning steps that you did maybe to kind of help change that situation?
I like that question.
Mm,
So it's really taking a step back.
mm,
Again, it's asking myself questions. So, how do I want to feel in this? What
mm,
am I seeing going forward? What do I want going forward? And having those questions asked to myself, I can get clarity on what I really want instead of living from my old ways of that feeling like that little girl that thought that she could control everything because I felt responsible for everything.
mm.
So if I'm a little girl and I feel responsible for my parents and my sister and my grandmother and everybody in my life, I thought that I had a sense of control. I never did, which is why I didn't have the ability to, I'm going to use the words that are used now because I didn't know them then, but emotionally relegate myself, not relegate. You know what
Yeah,
I'm trying to say.
I do. Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, no. I mean, and at that time too, with I mean, young age, trying to hold everybody together in probably very toxic,
Yeah.
crazy times.
Yeah.
Fear, not certain who's going to blow up or what's going to happen. Um,
No joke. That's an understatement because I didn't ever know what life was going to look like.
yeah,
So, to give you an example, one of my really good friends, my daughter's godmother, we've known each other since third grade. And memories are just starting to come back to me. The more I'm doing the healing work and going
yeah,
through the healing process, the more memories are coming back to me.
yeah.
So it just came back to me the last couple of years. I can remember her and I walking home from school, usually with like her parent or something. And we would go over, we lived across the street from each other. We'd go to the house, I'd ring the doorbell, I'd be excited. I'm going to see my mom. I haven't seen her all day. Like, she was at home at that point, and she would open the door and just slap me across the face.
Wow.
And that happened in my mind from when memories started coming back a couple of times, a few times. When I went back to my friend and I said, wow, I remember this happening. She said, Kim, that happened on a regular. She said, when we would walk up to the house, you'd ring the doorbell, your mom would consistently just slap you across the face when she opened the door.
Wow.
So literally, I had like no sense of safety, even from just coming home from school. That's not to mention what happened at night, because I have very clear memories on them throwing things at each other in the living room.
Yeah.
So it felt like I lived in a third world country, to be honest. We didn't have power. We didn't have hot water.
In America, in the U.S. of A.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. I mean, we learn that now through the gift of healing, but man, so you're doing this stuff, and at what point, we parents, I say this all the time, Kimberly, and you can tell me what you think, but oftentimes, we try and tell our kids what we want them to do, and then expect them to do what we say. And in reality, kids do what they see. They become who they see, right?
Yeah.
And to kind of fast forward from early childhood, you talked about it, marrying someone and kind of probably repeating. Tell me how that was for you. Tell us how that was.
Yeah, I was definitely repeating patterns that I didn't even know, because I only knew what I knew. I didn't know what I didn't know. So I was going to a man who had his own addictions. I was going to a man emotionally unavailable.
Yeah.
And so insecure. And again, I had no safety. It was always chaos. I didn't know what to expect moment to moment. I didn't know what to expect when I walk in from work. It was just survival to the fittest, honestly, because it was just always super chaotic.
Yeah.
Then I only knew what I knew, so I had no idea. And then, of course, I have my daughter, and so it's like, okay, well, what am I going to do? Because I knew what I wanted. I wanted to raise a child differently than how I was raised.
Yeah.
And a part of me had no idea how I was going to do it. And then the other part of me, I followed my intuition. I basically was giving her what I wanted as a child myself.
Wow.
As best as I could. You know what I mean? For what I had at the time, as best as I could.
Well, I love that, and from that absence, sometimes it's the things that we don't get are the very things that we're able to give later in life, like what you're talking about, right? And parents, they do the best they can with what they know, but the things that they don't know can be damaging long term for us, right? I mean, it's because you're coming home getting slapped, and then at night, like you said, it's like who knows, every man or woman for themselves, I'm sure, and then just safety, that sense of safety, and so.
And also repeating the patterns of wanting to rescue someone. I wanted to rescue both of my parents, but particularly I wanted to rescue my dad.
Really?
My dad was the one that I was always striving to get his love from, because he was so emotionally unavailable due to the drinking. I was striving to get that. So it was really interesting to see now in hindsight how I did the same with my daughter's father. I thought that I could save him. I thought that I could rescue him. And I was striving to create a different person. Because, when I received the award in 2023 for the Purple Ribbon of Courage, it's interesting because when I got up to speak to accept it, I shared the story that when I was in high school, their alcoholism was at a rage, like the worst that it had been. And so I spent my childhood in bars with them anyways. I spent more time in bars than I did anything.
Yeah.
So in high school, I would feel responsible to spend the time at the bars with them and walk my dad home because I was so scared he wouldn't be able to get home. My
Right.
mom was drunk, but my mom had herself. Like, I wasn't scared about my mom. It was my dad, because he would get so drunk, he literally would not be able to walk.
Right.
So, and we always lived near a bar. Sometimes we lived on the top of a bar. Sometimes we lived across the street. This time in high school, we lived around the corner. So we always lived in a mile radius of a bar.
Yeah.
So I would go to the bar, stay there until they were ready to leave, walk with my father's arm around me, and literally walk him home to make sure he'd get there okay.
Mm.
And what I would do is ask him the same questions again and again, because in my mind as a teenager, I wanted to see a different side of my dad. I didn't want to see that drunk, angry man. I wanted to see another side. So it would always go back to, he was 9 years old when his dad died. His oldest brother was in prison. They allowed him to show up to my grandfather's funeral in prison uniform and shackles.
Wow.
And they invited my entire father's class to the funeral.
Mm.
So imagine the shame that he felt. And he never got to feel this. He never got to sit with any of this. He never got to grieve his father. So these questions I would repeatedly ask him when I was walking him home, he'd turn into that crying 9-year-old scared little boy.
Mm.
And that was a way that I thought that I was, well, I was holding a space for him to be able to be that scared little boy, because otherwise he was trying to take care of the world. He himself was still repeating patterns of wanting to save the world.
Yeah.
You know?
Wow.
So it's interesting to see. Now I can look back and I'm like, wow, I really did have that mindset of, I couldn't save my father, but let me see if I can save the father of my child.
Yeah. Yeah.
Does that make sense?
No, most definitely. You know, we talk a lot about attracting those that we are accustomed to. You know, we attract wounded people, and what we're used to in our behaviors, we attract that type of person, and I believe that. So, man, that's very powerful what you shared. Thank you for sharing that. You know, there's a whole lot in that message.
I know.
You know, we could, you know, really dive deep into it. Maybe we'll have to come back and we can talk about some of the things you really, once you began to make some shifts to get to a different side of the table where you can really talk about it.
Yeah.
So, you know, and you're doing this stuff and you're bouncing back from childhood to marriage and the behaviors kind of just, you know, what was the turning point, Kimberly, when you're like, hey, you're ready to leave?
Oh my gosh. Well, that relationship or my other relationships, because I repeated the patterns over and over again.
I'm sure it wasn't
still learning. I'm giving myself grace that there's no way I'm going to break these habits overnight. I'm finally giving myself that grace. Because I keep learning lessons over and over again with relationships. Particularly relationships with men, because it is so deep-seated with this wanting to rescue men. It fascinates me.
Well, it's rescue, and there's some part in there, I think, too, about changing the man, right? Having the ability to rescue and change, and vice versa. Men do it for women as well. You know, I've had that experience too. So we don't always get it right the first time.
Or the second time.
But hopefully,
so where I am now today, I'm finally, this year has been so challenging for me. It's been quite the challenging year, and I've learned so much about myself, and I've learned how important it is to bring the relationship back to myself. That it comes back to me truly. Like I've instilled practices that I do so that it grows my confidence, so that it grows even my enthusiasm. Because the more I get drawn into other people, the less enthused I feel about my own life, if that makes any sense.
Wow. So what I'm hearing you say is that you realize the more you further you go down the lane with the other folks, you really lose focus on yourself.
Yeah, because of that codependency. It's really, for me, it's about self-awareness and
Yeah.
knowing that this process of codependency is not going to break overnight. Like I said, I'm in a process. I'm learning. It's not going to be an overnight thing. And knowing, having this awareness of how deep-seated this codependency is, when I choose to bring it back to myself,
Yeah.
I can have different kind of relationships in my life with people.
Yeah. Well, you know, you keep saying yourself, and what I've learned in my recovery process and surrendering all the things that I thought were the way to live and how I was this okay person when I was really a mess. You know, it really was about forgiving myself. There's a surrendering process,
Yes.
forgiveness, right, and then beginning to learn to love ourselves. And man, it's a lifetime.
Yeah, it really is. Yeah,
You know,
it's a lifetime of learning and a
lifetime.
lifetime of lessons.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes,
yeah.
yes, yes. And so you're saying, I think I heard you say you're starting to give yourself some grace or some
Lots of grace.
yeah. You know, my sponsor tells me in recovery, he tells me, Jeff, put the bat down when we're having those
Oh my
conversations.
gosh. Yeah,
You know, where you can just
yeah,
bang, bang,
yeah,
and really that just, I mean, that's just that relentless hold that these
yeah.
things have on us.
Oh
No
yeah,
matter,
because as a little girl, I learned really how to be so hard on myself because I felt responsible for everything and everyone.
yeah,
So I was super hard on myself. And some days it's not as easy to have the awareness of how hard I am on myself.
yeah,
And then other days I can quickly have the awareness and quickly like snap out of it.
yeah. So what leads you into those I don't want to say dark days, but those more struggling days? What are some? Have you identified some triggers or some
Oh yeah,
feelings?
especially honestly, this time of the year, the holidays are really tough for me.
Mm,
And I believe it's a generational thing because when I went into my genealogy, just on my mother's side, my great grandmother, she died when she was only in her 30s from like the Spanish flu that went through this area. So then my grandmother was only a year old, less than a year old when her mother died. So you're talking about the grief that is sitting there just in those decades.
yeah,
When I don't even know what's past my
yeah,
great grandmother because it gets really weird since when my grandmother died, my when my great grandmother died, my great grandfather was still alive, but he died young. So when
mm,
he died, he set it up for his brother and his wife to adopt my grandmother. So
okay,
because that adoption took place, it's really challenging to find anything on my great grandmother because it's now said that really the aunt and the uncle were parents, but they weren't parents. They were legally for parents. But so just
mm,
in those two generations, you get the amount of grief that you do. And then so I can only imagine my grandmother raising my mother, the holidays were really hard because I'm sure it brought back stuff that she wasn't even aware of because she was only a baby when her mother died.
yeah, yeah,
And so then my mother had a hard time this time of the year. It was never, she didn't have enough money. You know, what she bought wasn't good enough. It was
yeah.
always lack. It was always a mindset of scarcity.
Mm,
So it's
mm.
really hard for me not to go in scarcity mode this time of the year.
Well, but you know, I can see the progress just listening to you, and the whole thing about generational grief and behaviors, good and bad, are true, right? I
Yeah.
mean, it is passed down. I believe that to be true, Kimberly. And but man, when I see your stuff out there, and I just give you some props. Those of you that don't know, you need to go to get connected with her because she's always sharing these most insightful, powerful, inspiring messages around loving self, around accepting
Mhm.
self, around just serving others. I mean, you do that. I look forward to all the different things that you promote. Clearly, with the intent of helping people break the chain, Kimberly. I mean, and that was the first thing that attracted me to you at the beginning of our relationship a few years ago, was that. And I've seen you blossom. Right? I've seen you come out of things that were holding you back. For those of you out there, man, and you're in that space where you're still trying to save your man or partner and save and be the responsible one. I've seen this woman just stand brightly.
Thank you.
And so, no, thank you for allowing me to say that, because you're very, I don't want to say shy, but just really reserved on the information that you do and how it helps people. Right? I mean, it takes courage to share what we're talking about today. Right? And and you do that with just the kindness and generosity.
And the vulnerability can feel scary.
Yeah.
So let's not talk about the don't ask, don't tell environment, because coming from that, I was always told that I talked too much and I felt too much. I was always too much. So with me going through this journey for the last few years, it's really a journey of overcoming that fear of using my voice. Because I was told that I was the talker. I was told that I was the feeler. Because they didn't want anybody to know what was happening inside the home. Like when my dad died, people were coming in, they were talking about how he did this and how he did that, and they loved this and they loved his sense of humor and everything. At one point, my sister and I turned to each other and go, what man are they talking about?
Who's that guy, right?
Who are they talking about? They're not talking about our father.
Not our dad, no way, right? Wow.
But that just shows the clarity on how you can bring one mask to one place and you can wear a mask in another place, and then you're really showing your authentic self when you walk in that door at night.
Yeah.
So that really showed the clarity on that, because he really showed, just using my dad as an example, he showed himself a whole different way with people.
Yeah.
So they didn't want people to know what was happening at home. My own aunt, his oldest sister, had no idea what was happening in his personal life.
Wow.
Because he didn't want people to know what was happening. And I'm sure he didn't want to know because of the shame that he was carrying, and because of the regret that he was carrying and the guilt. It was clear that he was carrying all of this for decades. I'm honestly, probably even before he was 9 years old when his dad died.
Yeah, it's a cycle that starts early, Kimberly, and the expressions just change as we get older.
Yeah.
Right? The pain is early. The wounds are cut early, and they just get deeper and deeper and deeper, right? And I love what you said about what goes on behind closed doors. Who's really that, right? And, for me, I used to be like, who am I, right? Dr. Jekyll or Mr. Hyde.
And I feel like we all have that.
Yeah. There's no doubt. Some of us are more clever at it than others.
Exactly.
But it's not an award I want to earn anymore.
No, and that's part of the process too. It's like, well, how does it serve me to wear this mask? Like, for example, I just learned about myself, just observing myself. When I meet somebody new and they don't know me yet, I'll wear that mask of being a whole different person.
Really?
And then it feels super scary to be so authentic with people, because of having that experience growing up in this kind of household where I was judged, I was criticized, I was rejected by the two people who were supposed to love me authentically and unconditionally. So of course I'm going to feel scared to show my authentic self to people that I'm just meeting for the first time. It triggers me right back into being that scared little girl that, oh my God, this man in my life who's supposed to love me unconditionally keeps rejecting me. He keeps, judging me.
Yeah.
So this year in particularly, what I was really working on is removing three things in my life: condemnation, rejection, and criticism. Because I was constantly criticized, I was constantly condemned, and I was constantly rejected.
Yeah.
Well, at least I felt that way. You know what I mean? That was my own experience.
Well, I mean, if you felt it, it was more than likely true, Kimberly. You just didn't know what it was, you know,
Exactly.
at that time in particular. And man, I just, God. Hmm.
So if I really want to have authentic relationships, having those three things in my life are not going to serve having authentic relationships with people. People are going to know when I'm criticizing them. People are going to know when I'm condemning them.
Yeah.
I just
And
said the
then,
other day to a coworker, I'm super proud of myself. I did not judge what happened.
we got to take the little wins, Kimberly. I mean, if we don't take the
Absolutely.
wins, right,
Yeah.
and those stack up, right? Because I mean, rejection and criticism, and condemnation, man, those are, and to be able to share that is freedom by itself.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, I mean, because I'm the 5 year, I still, when I finally was able to get back to my 5-year-old self, right? That little
Yeah.
boy who was scared to death and already, you know, from being rejected, from being criticized, from not feeling worth
Yeah.
being here, right?
Yeah.
I didn't know anything about all that stuff. All I knew was I was, you know, I was trapped. I couldn't go anywhere, and it was really confusing because. And I'm gonna say this, not in comparison to what we both grew up with, but just to try and make a point here around. It doesn't matter all the time whether you come from a totally broken home or a home that has love and everything else in it, or caring parents. Certain things that are similar, like neglect. Certain things are similar in not being available emotionally,
Absolutely.
right? So
Yeah.
and that even made it more confusing because then I really thought I was really something wrong with me because I should be the happiest guy in the world because most of my friends didn't have what I had with parents and things like that. I still didn't know where I fit.
Yeah. I can totally relate to that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, most of my friends had at least one alcoholic parent. I was the
Mm.
only one that had two. And then I
Wow.
had other friends that didn't have any of that chaos in their life.
Yeah.
So the contrast of it, I still had a sense that I wasn't good enough. I still had a sense I wasn't worthy to be their friend.
Yeah.
Especially the first time I walked in. I just told this friend this a few years ago for the first time. Her parents were, you know, very successful in their careers, raised all of their children really well to where they're successful, they know who they are, you know, whatever. I walked into their home for the first time. They had cloth napkins. Now, in my mind, parents would have never had the idea of using cloth napkins. So I had a perception that they must have been wealthy.
Yeah.
But what they were really doing is they were aligned with what was best for Mother Earth. So they
Yeah.
were doing it for the environment. But
Mm-hmm.
of course, as a kid that I'm coming from, I'm not worthy to be in this home and I'm not good enough to be in this home. I'm coming from that mindset of, oh, they must be wealthy.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
we could barely keep on our lights and we could barely keep hot water in the house.
Yeah.
And we were evicted so many times. You know, I was homeless as a teenager. I had to live with my grandmother. So I had a whole different mindset. And I totally relate to that not being good enough.
Yeah. And
And
it
I can
does.
see how it shows up in my life today at times.
So when it shows up for those, and I'm looking at the clock, and we're kind of coming down to the end already. We just feel like we're getting started. When that shows up, what do you do, Kimberly, that kind of resets yourself, or maybe you don't catch it until afterwards. But what can you share with the audience that they can take away today for those of us out there in that mess and trying to get better?
Well, again, it goes back to asking myself questions. I take a step back. And you're right. I don't always catch it right when it's happening, especially the not good enough conversation. That tends to be after the fact.
Yeah.
And it's usually something that happens for me to step back and be like, wow, that was so in that space. And I didn't even know that it was in space.
Yeah.
So then when I see it and I know it, I personally do a meditation. I've made sure that I do my meditation daily, and I'm
Okay.
super proud of myself. I've got 82 consecutive days of meditation. Oh,
Wow.
that's a celebration in itself. That's
That is,
those
girl.
consecutive days that I've done it.
One day at a time, keep moving
Yeah,
forward. That's awesome.
yeah.
That's
So I do
awesome.
a meditation and then I allow myself to surrender to that and then just be with whatever comes up once I do that, because having that stillness, it allows something else to open, and it may not be that moment, it may not even be that day, it may even be that week, it may be like a month later, maybe 5 months later, but something shows up for me to have more clarity about myself, on what happened, that showed up, but then not good enough. And it always stems back to being that scared little girl who
Mm,
thought that she had control, who was just scared.
yeah, man,
So,
and
yeah,
scared as a child. I mean, it's. Woo.
yeah, yeah,
I remember the days at Kimberly, and I'm so grateful today that we can have conversations like this around that, and there's places that people can go. You talked a lot about codependency. And there's different programs for codependency out there as well. And as we kind of start hitting the reset button and winding down, um, what do you want people to know? We talked about a lot of different things, and thank you for being so bold, right?
yeah. Thank you for having the space and
Yeah,
having this kind of conversation.
yeah. It's just really been great for you to do that. And what is it that you talked about pausing, you talked about meditation, you talked about reflection. Um, what can you summarize from where you started in a couple of minutes, where you started to where you are today? What can you attribute to something that we maybe have not talked about yet? Is there anything else? I'm sure there is, but that you can put an icing on the cake of what we talked about as we kind of wind down in your journey.
Yeah, I think I look back and I feel like my biggest fear has always been being afraid of what I'm going to feel and being afraid of what's going to happen. And again, it comes back to thinking that I have a sense of control, and I don't. But if I think I have that sense of control, I'm scared, because I'm scared that I'm going to be triggered back into something that happened when I was little.
Mm,
And then when I allow the process to unfold how it's meant to unfold, and I see and experience that, wow, nothing what I thought was going to happen, including how I feel,
yeah,
it changed my narrative. And that's how I'm growing as I'm growing, because I'm still choosing to be courageous enough to still step into that when I'm afraid.
yeah,
And then when it unfolds differently, it gives me that confidence. Oh, it's safe to do that. I am okay to take that step.
yeah,
Especially feelings, right?
yeah.
Because I was always a feeler, and I always
Mm,
felt so much that it
mm.
felt unsafe to feel.
Wow.
Does that make sense?
Ooh, yeah, girl. Because boys aren't supposed to be sensitive. I hear feeling, I fear sensitivity, right? So that's
Yeah,
where I line things up. And for me, I'm that sensitive boy.
yeah.
When boys are supposed to be men.
And
You know,
that's a hard part too. Yeah. I just had that conversation with a friend,
mm,
because he's going through a lot, and still in our society tells men they're still not supposed to be deep feelers. They're
yeah,
still not supposed to be emotionally connected, which is so backwards. If we
that's
truly
crap.
want a society that's connected,
That
then men are human beings. So
men are
how are you
human,
going to expect men not to feel?
right? It's crazy, right? And
Yeah,
it's even crazier that we pass that down to the 4 and 5 and 6-year-old boys, who statistically, Kimberly, get less and less contact from their parents each one of
exactly.
those ages. By the time they're 7 years old, they have one hug to equal to their sister who gets hugged every day. right?
Yeah.
So we grow up to be emotional retards. And so, you know, I say that only because we just haven't learned another way.
Exactly.
You know, and I'm proud. I'm the big crybaby in the family now. I cry, you know, I cry freely. You know, I'm grateful for being able to say that hurt my feelings. I'm grateful to be able to say things that were kind of like sissy words when I grew up.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's awesome that you're holding that space, because then other men and other boys will get it, that it is safe, it is okay. You're being that role model.
It's so important, right? I
Yeah.
mean, and that's why I do what I do, right?
Yeah.
Because I don't want, you know, it doesn't have to be the way I went through that. You don't have to be struggling in silence, suffering in silence. You don't have to be confused about your worth or who you are, right? It's okay to cry. Almost anyway, we can talk about that forever. I mean, I want to ask you, you know, to make sure you tell everybody how we can get a hold of you and what you got planned, and maybe we can continue to learn from you and going into 2025.
Well, I would also like to say that I do have a free gift, that it's 5 ways to heal from your own personal trauma, an ebook. So it's for people who are maybe just starting out with going through their own recovery with their trauma, or someone who's kind of put their big toe into it and they're kind of tiptoeing into it. Someone who's looking for maybe simple steps to take to go through the process that will maybe open up things that they didn't know.
Awesome.
So I wanted to share that. And then I can be found on Instagram, therealkimberly.henry. And I can be found on Facebook at Kimberly Henry.
I encourage everybody to look her up and write it down and follow. If you can't get it, then reach out to me. I'll make sure you get connected to her. And listen, Kimberly, I want to say thank you for Saturday afternoon. Man, what a Saturday! And continue to do the amazing things that you're doing. And we'll have to kind of check back with you in sometime in 2025 and see what's up in your life.
Yeah, and I'd love to have you as a guest.
Oh yeah, well, hey, let's make that
That would be
work.
awesome.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's how we can go deeper into it. Yeah,
that would
you
be
can
great.
come on as a guest.
That would be great. I just want to tell you guys, I remember when she was struggling about doing her podcast and she did it. So listen, you know, there's so many victories that we could talk about, Kimberly. I want to say thank you, thank you, thank you. Always a pleasure.
You.
Yes, ma'am. Great job.
I appreciate you. Thank you.
You're welcome. Take care. Have a great Saturday. Happy holidays too, huh?
Thank you. Same to you.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Woo. Hey, listen, guys. I mean, I just want to say thank you all for taking some time Saturday and really reach out to Kimberly and go back and listen to this. I mean, there were some things. I know we kind of moved around a lot. Man, there's just some really nice, soft nuggets that you can take and share with your friends. We all have family members that are going through it, man. We all have family members that are caught in addiction and some situations that are very ugly. And what this young lady has been through and helping other folks do, I encourage you to reach out. And then, listen, have a great Saturday afternoon. Thank everybody for showing up and watch that Stinking Thinking. And let's make sure you reach out to my friend Kimberly Henry. Have a great day. Talk to you again soon.